Here in Florida, there is something for everyone. We have the sun, we have those beaches, the theme parks, sports, emerging art, dining, you name it. But to bring in millions of visitors each year and to keep attracting people to live here in the Sunshine State, it all comes down, to safety. And concerns about crime are a constant thought for people, not just here in Florida, but across the whole country. And dealing with crime is a wide-ranging effort. It's touching on drugs and mental health to immigration, even human trafficking. So here to discuss safety and all that it takes to maintain, we have a pair of Florida sheriffs who are tasked with keeping the public safe, us. So we're joined by Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, as well as Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood, for something of like a sheriff's roundtable. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here once again on In Focus. And yeah, Sheriff Judd, if I could start with you. You've served as sheriff for what, more than 20 years now, in the county where you grew up. Tell me about why you wanted that job, this job in the first place, and how you came to spend so much of your life in law enforcement and really public service.
Well, I think it's a God thing. From the time I was 4 or 5 years old, little bitty guy, I wanted to be the sheriff of the county. And I can remember the kids in the neighborhood saying, "Oh, you're from South Cumbie Road in Lakeland. They're never going to let you be the sheriff. You're just a little Cumbie critter." And I would say, "Yeah, y'all wait. One day I'm going to be the sheriff." And there's nothing else I ever wanted to do. At 18 years of age, I went to work with the sheriff's office. Sheriff Brannon, way back in the day, hired me. And that was just after the dinosaurs disappeared from the face of the earth. I worked my way through the organization. And then my last sheriff, Sheriff Crow, retired. I ran for office, and the great people of Polk County elected me and have allowed me to stay. Our crime's at a 53-year low. I wake up every day, and it's like my happy place. I love serving and helping the people of Polk County, and that's how I got here, was because of the wonderful people. And I married my high school sweetheart along the way, and she kept me out of trouble so I could get here.
And beautiful. And Sheriff Chitwood, how about you? You've led the VSO for quite some time now. And what drew you to this line of work? And also, how does someone from Philadelphia end up leading a sheriff's office right here in Central Florida?
Allison, thank you for having us. And sometimes I ask myself that same question. I'm a second-generation cop, born and raised in Philadelphia. My dad served as a homicide detective as a cop for 20 years before he left to go off and be a police chief in 3 different locations. As a kid, I wanted to be nothing but a cop. As a teenager, I thought cops stunk. And I really wasn't too into my father, his profession, or his friends. I was the Antichrist to him, and he was the Antichrist to me. And then I dropped out of college and I got married. I'm 20 years old. I got 2 kids. I'm thinking to myself, all those things that I despised in my father, they're really good qualities to follow. So I did. I joined the Philadelphia Police Department at 23. When I walked through the doors of the Philadelphia Police Academy, the sign above the door said, "Enter to learn, leave to serve." And I knew when I walked through that door, those doors, I would never do nothing else with the rest of my life. And I was blessed. I was there for 18 years. I was one of the most decorated officers there. I had been commended by the department over 50 times. I was a lieutenant in the homicide division. Life was good. But there was something yearning inside that I wanted to lead my own organization. I got hired shortly after that to be the chief in Shawnee, Oklahoma, which I loved. And very fortuitous, a sergeant who I worked for was living in Ormond Beach, and he said, "Mike, you need to apply for the chief's job here. The place is a toilet, and you are perfect for that job." I don't mean to offend anybody. That was the phrase he used. And I was there for almost 11 years when Sheriff Johnson announced he was retiring. I had no intention of running for sheriff, but the former mayor, the current mayor, the city manager, the Chamber of Commerce, everywhere I turned, they told me, "This job is perfect for you. Run." And I did. In that first election, I was fortunate enough to get 51% of the vote. I ran against 5 people. Second time I ran unopposed. And the third time I tried to match Sheriff Judd for the third term, and I didn't get quite the percentage he got, but I still got 82% of the vote to start my third term. So, and to follow exactly what Sheriff Judd said, when you wake up in the morning and you're in this role, man, there ain't anything else you want to do but help the people of your county and then statewide. And I think Florida sheriffs, we set the tone nationwide, I think, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little later.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of us don't have that aha moment in our lives of finding what we're going to do for a living, and both of you seem to have had that, and will continue to have that. And so I do want to talk. Yeah, let's deep dive into safety. You know, we know a couple of key parts of your jobs. You know, you have to arrest the bad guys and essentially make the streets safe, but you also have to make us, the residents, feel safe. And there's some overlap there. But how do you do both of those things at the same time? So, Sheriff Judd, let's start with you on this.
You know, I think Sheriff Chitwood and I do it the same way. We brand our agency and our organization and our mission. It's important to understand that we were elected to provide a leadership. And when you look, the great state of Florida, the free state of Florida, we have the rules in place, or the laws. We have 1020 life, minimum mandatories. We also have 85% sentencing. So we have the tools to keep people safe. In unincorporated Polk County and my service cities, our crime's at a 53-year low. But we serve people and we go out and we work very, very hard. And we clearly communicate. Sheriff Chitwood and I do this the exact same way. We clearly communicate to the good folks, we're going to protect you. And to the bad folks, we're going to lock you up if you violate the law. And our deputies do exactly that. So we message what we mean and we do what we say we're going to do. And that gives people a level of comfort. I hear people all the time say, do you know why I moved to Florida? And I go, no, Governor DeSantis. You know why I moved to Polk County? Grady Judd. And I know it's the same thing over in Volusia County with Sheriff Chitwood. They come to our communities because they're safe and they feel safe, and they're going to be safe because we don't let thugs and criminals and gangbangers run over the good people of our community. We just won't do that.
So then, Sheriff Judd, you know, sticking with you for a second, you know, when we talk about safety, one thing that a lot of viewers, you know, our parents especially think about is school safety. And in recent years, we've seen what seems like a growing number of threats, often made by kids, you know, turning out to be unfounded or jokes or a hoax. How in the heck do you grapple with that issue?
Well, I had the honor of being on the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission, and we did a deep dive into all of the problems that occurred there. So a lot of the threats you're hearing about at the schools today is a result of us taking all of the threats serious. Words matter. Now, today, if a kid goes to school and he says, I'm going to shoot, I'm going to stab, I'm going to beat you up, we immediately believe him and take him at his word until we dispel that. So we're hypersensitive about having schools layered with security. And the majority of this security that we do is invisible. We don't want the children to see it. We don't want the children to act like they're in Fort Knox and they don't have any freedom. But we do a lot of internal security systems so that we can make sure children are safe. And all of this is perpetuated by this new social media. They can get on there and run their mouth and brag to people. But believe this, if you write a threat, we're going to come to you, knock on your door, and search it up. And if you put it in writing, that is a felony, and you're going to be charged. We don't care if you're 6 or 60. You cannot threaten people, especially at school.
And on that note, Sheriff Chitwood, you in particular, had strong words for parents after a series of threats against Volusia County schools last year. So real quick, I want to take a listen to some of what you said.
Parents, you don't want to raise your kids? I'm going to start raising them. Every time we make an arrest, your kid's photo is going to be put out there. And if I could do it, I'm going to perp walk your kid so that everybody can see what your kid's up to.
Right? So what kind of response did you get to those comments? And have you seen things change over the last year?
Overwhelmingly positive, Allison. And a year into it, I can tell you, written threats to kill or maim or whatever are down 50%, because we said just what Sheriff Judd said. We're responsible for a lot of students. I'm responsible for safety of 64,000 students. I'm responsible for teachers, administrators, and school employees. I cannot allow 30 or 40 knuckleheads to put those schools into lockdown, to have parents not send their kids to school because of these threats that were posted on social media. Let somebody else worry about the 30 or 40 kids. We have to worry about the rest of the students. And if we make a mistake, somebody can die. And that's when we heard Sheriff Judd say, there's zero tolerance. We're coming to your house at 2 a.m. To check you out, and we have to let the schools know in the morning that you can open. We'll have extra patrols out there. It's imperative that our children know that they are safe. And, again, I think Florida leads in that message, and it comes out of the governor's office, it flows through the legislature, and it flows into county council members that this is a priority. They're our future. Let's invest in that future and keep them safe.
So, Sheriff Chitwood, since we were discussing school safety, Volusia County was just recently chosen as one of 3 school districts to test out this new pilot program starting next year in 2026. So they're going to be using drones like this to respond to potential school shooter situations, providing real-time info to those responding law enforcement, and even actively distracting a potential attacker. So tell me about the campus guardian angel system and how your office will work with the district and the private sector even on this issue.
This was, again, a perfect example of the state of Florida not plateauing and saying, okay, we have all these wonderful things in place, nothing's ever going to happen. This comes straight out of the governor's office, straight out of the chancellor of schools. There's this new emerging technology where a drone is on campus. When activated or alerted to an active shooter, the control is in Austin, Texas. They could automatically dispatch that drone as officers are making their way in or deputies are making their way in and confront and confuse the gunman. Now, the direction we got is test it, break it, do whatever you got to do. We got to see if this is something, another tool in our toolbox. And I'm ecstatic that we got it because I think we have one of the best relationships when it comes to safety and security between school administration and my administration. I have a captain over there. The guy's fantastic, Captain Todd Smith. He is state of the art. He's worked on metal detectors, on zero eyes, on gaggle alert. I mean, the guy, he eats, breathes, and sleeps school security. And I think that's one of the reasons that we were able to be selected for this pilot program. We're excited. We're going to learn like everybody else is and report the findings back to the governor and to the chancellor of schools. And right now, I think the expense of it is something that, how are we going to be able to deploy this and have a public partner private ship to fund this? But again, it's the wave of the future.
And indeed, and it's fascinating the stuff that you all are doing behind the scenes like this, like these efforts. So then in that realm, Sheriff Judd, how have advances then in technology changed the way that you lead your office over the years? I'm sure there's quite the evolution.
Certainly, technology is not only the wave of the future, it's the wave of today. We all do drones, we all do technology, and the goal is to keep people safe and provide an environment, an umbrella, if you will, over the folks, but yet they don't see it. It's the invisible umbrella so that they're safe and that we can respond to emergencies quickly, that we can identify these folks. We have technology today. We call it Live 911, where we actually hear the dispatch of the call in the deputy's cruiser. At the same time, the call taker is receiving that in the communication center. So we're self-dispatching, And in fact, having to tell the dispatcher, hey, you're going to be getting a call about this emergency. We have drone deployments. I'm excited about this research that Sheriff Chitwood is doing because the possibility of that is absolutely remarkable. But if you're not actively engaged with research and technology, then you're behind. Last year, I created a Sheriff's Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, and we have partnered with the Polytechnic. And they actually send their capstone students to come be with us and work on projects and programs with us. In fact, I'm really proud. The Polytechnic gives out 3 awards. And last year, 2 of the 3 awards that were given out to teams that were working with me. The 3rd award went to a team working with NASA. So I thought we were in pretty good company. But we're developing now technology to investigate crimes and investigate AI and to respond to calls for service and see how to protect children. We're doing that now behind the scenes. So while we are looking at today, we're visioning for tomorrow. And that's the way we do this.
So changing gears just a bit, another major focus of both of your offices, sheriffs, has been stopping the flow of illegal drugs, including fentanyl, here in Central Florida. So I want to know, what kind of results have you seen on that front? Sheriff Chitwood, to you.
Yeah, thanks. And to follow up on something the sheriff said, if you're going to run an organization, you have to be a sense of urgency, bold, innovative, and creative. I don't care what your organization is. And I think we do that when it comes to the fentanyl issue. This year is the first time in the last 5 years that we have seen a 37% decrease in overdose deaths. And conversely, that same number has dropped for overdoses. There's a lot there. I think we're doing better in emergency rooms. We have folks like the Volusia Recovery Alliance who go out with us on every overdose and try to get that person into rehab. But most importantly, I think being fully staffed is our overdose task force, where every overdose and every overdose death, detectives and a supervisor go out to the scene, they get the victim's cell phone, and they work backwards to try to go after the dealer. If we can't get them for manslaughter, we can get them for sentencing a qualifying amount of dope that's going to put them behind bars for years and years and years. That approach, coupled with the task force approach, working with the federal government to try to stop what's coming in here, we're not declaring victory, far from that, but I think things are a lot better than they were when we first encountered fentanyl.
And it's cool to hear this tone from you, Sheriff Chitwood, having talked about this with you on the show since about 2017. So that is definitely uplifting that forward movement. And Sheriff Judd, before we wrap, I do want to talk about an issue that sometimes goes maybe unnoticed or perhaps under-discussed, and that's human trafficking. We know about it, but since it happens in the shadows, what are you doing to combat it?
We do human trafficking operations 2 times a year where we invite law enforcement agencies from throughout Central Florida. In fact, we had one law enforcement agency from Minnesota join us, and we focus on the victims of human trafficking. When we do these operations, we always arrest, in addition to 200 people, victims. We find victims in this 200 plus people that are victims of human trafficking. And in the last time, some of them came out of Mexico. They thought that they were paying their coyote to work. They thought, well, I'm going to have to work in a restaurant. I'm going to have to work in a field. And they come here to find out that they have to work as prostitutes. So we are aggressively going after our human traffickers every day. And we culminate that in a couple of big roundups every year, and we're being very successful. We also have our NGOs that join us so we can immediately create services for those victims. I mean, it starts at the moment we take them into custody. So together, we're making a positive difference. But if the community, when they see something or hear something, if they'll say something, if they'll call us, we'll respond and we'll keep them safe.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. To keep up with important issues impacting our communities and hear more conversations with the people who are shaping the future, subscribe to our channel. You can also download our app or find Spectrum News on your TV for balanced, in-depth political coverage and more.